doing some really cool things with Airly. You're basically using food to reduce climate change. And can you just tell us more about how you're doing that and how you're looking at these carbon converting farms to actually do that?
Absolutely. So I'll tell you, my training and the training in the food industry in general, because we're very focused on safety and have been for years, our primary goal is a safe food supply for the country. We focus a lot on what we call root cause analysis. So what is the cause of the problem? If there's ever any kind of a food safety issue, it's all about what's the root cause. So the way we approached this thing with our training was not about, you know, 18 or 21 or whatever to sustainable development goals, which are all great goals, but they make things very complex. We focused on a certain area and we said we want to focus on climate change because it's driving a lot of issues, right, around globally. And we want to focus on the root cause. It becomes actually relatively clear. The fog kind of clears when you think about it that way. And the root cause of climate change that everybody agrees on is that the levels of greenhouse gas in the atmosphere are too high. Folks don't normally, it doesn't really make sense though to people when you talk about parts per million, right? They're like, well, that doesn't seem like it's that big of a deal. 410 ppm versus 280 ppm pre-industrial, but you've got to, this is where you got to think a little bit about the science behind it. And if these greenhouse gases are dispersions in the atmosphere, so that even at those very, very low levels, they're trace gas in the atmosphere, but they're trapping the heat, they're reflecting the heat back toward the earth, and the earth is no longer going through its normal cycles, and the temperature is going higher and higher and higher, and everybody sees this, right? You see it in the intensity of the heat waves in the summer. You see in how soon the heat waves come. I think we had over 100-degree temperatures in the south of this country back in, like, I think it was March, maybe. It was right. It was great, first time ever. So people are beginning to see that. So kind of it all makes sense. We said we're going to focus on the root cause. Can we actually feed ourselves without emitting greenhouse gas into the atmosphere? Can we not only go to zero, but can we go negative? And can we actually participate in drawdown? And so that was where root cause analysis, too much greenhouse gas. How do you actually draw it down and get it out of there? And what we saw was a disruptive technology. If you remember, my goal was to look for new technologies out there and commercialize them and turn them into new markets. Because the beautiful thing about new markets is it becomes a virtuous cycle. Investors want to invest in it, and then you can do more of the good for the earth. Then investors invest more, we sell more, and it's this virtuous cycle of cleaning there. So we focused on greenhouse gas drawdown and using the new disruptive technology that some folks are calling carbon farming. That's what we call it. Other folks are calling it regenerative agriculture, but I've drawn a fine pointed distinction. But basically, it is making sure that you're farming so you minimize inputs of greenhouse gas emitting materials, mainly fertilizer, right? And so you make sure that you minimize greenhouse gas emissions on the farm. And that gets kind of simple too, because the major emissions coming from a farm are coming from fertilizer. It's a super high energy intensity process to make fertilizer. As a matter of fact, how to make fertilizer was discovered when they were observing lightning strikes in fields and they saw there was nitrogen fixed in the soil. So it's that kind of intense energy that led to this process. It's an old process called the Haber-Bosch process that fixes nitrogen and produces fertilizer. So it takes a lot of energy to make fertilizer. And then when you put it on the ground, only a small percentage of it actually gets used by the plant. A lot of it just kind of dissipates into the soil, converts into a gas called nitrous oxide, and leaks back into the atmosphere. And nitrous oxide is 350 times more damaging than even carbon dioxide when it comes to greenhouse gas warming potential. So that's a place you really got to focus in the agriculture. And we do what we call precision nitrogen management. And those are things like making sure that you minimize the amount of fertilizer that's used. If you need fertilizer in one part of the field, but not in another part of the field, make sure you only put that fertilizer on the one part of the field and turn it off the other part of the field. The other big thing is no-till. So when you rip the ground up, the carbon that's been stored in the ground goes right back up into the air, right? So you got to make sure that you don't ever disturb the soil. And there are a significant number of farmers doing that now. I think it's almost 30%. But you have to marry that with a discipline they call cover crops, right? So that the soil is never left exposed. And that's how you really trap a lot of the carbon in the ground. And with all these great practices, right? We still didn't know if you could go negative on the farm. We went out there, we talked to Dr. Ratan Lal at Ohio State University. We talked to Dr. Keith Palshin at Colorado State University, like thought leaders in this area. People have been studying this for years. And nobody even, they said, we don't know if it can be done. We don't know if you can actually take a farm level life cycle analysis and go negative. So all the actions, the fuel for the tractor, the fertilizer, the seeds, everything you do on that farm, the lights in the farmhouse, right? All those things, the entire act of that, could it be negative emissions per kilogram of grain you produce? That's what we've done at Airly. Took us a couple of years to do it. We teamed up with Dr. Keith Palston at Colorado State University, who's a Nobel Prize laureate in this area. And we invested, we selected the farms, and we had a big advantage because I mentioned that we're owned by Post Holdings, right? Post Holdings also owns a company called Post Consumer Brands, which makes all the Post cereals that folks know and love. Honey Bunches of Oats and grape nuts and shredded wheat, all these kind of things, right? So we really know how to grow grains. So we were able to take kind of the best of our supply chain farmers, hook them up directly with the folks at Colorado State University and Dr. Keith Palston, and we were able to select a few farms that were high potential to achieve this. And in year one, we only found one farm that went negative, actually carbon drawdown at the life cycle analysis on the farm, and that's how we launched Airly, because then we merely preserve that benefit in a box of Airly by measuring carefully all the other emissions that come from baking a cracker, putting in a package, putting in a truck, shipping it. We measure those, and then we offset that with high quality carbon drawdown credits that come from a blend of forestry and more regenerative carbon farming agriculture. And we keep our footprint pure so the good we did on the farm is the good we deliver to the consumer, because we don't leave any other footprint. And that is what allowed this brand that is here to have a conversation of how food can draw down greenhouse gas, attack the root cause of climate change. And we're really out to try and get the whole food industry to do it. Is what our mission is.
Yeah, that's amazing stuff. And I know when I met you at the Green Biz conference, I was really impressed that the panel you were on. You were talking with some of the folks, actual farmers that were practicing, and you also had the folks that were managing the carbon credits for regenerative agriculture and all that, and some of the purchasers of that. So it was a really great session, and I think it's really important that our listeners really understand that this is a huge area of opportunity, and we're excited about what you're doing here. So,
well, and like I said, I think where we really need help and we really need to get the word out. You can see we've kind of, the technology is there. That's what's amazing. The technology is there, and we've proven it can be done, so that each box of crackers we produce. I mean, Airly is a snack cracker. It's and they come in different flavors. So this is kind of something that people normally eat anyway, right? It's a normal part of the healthy food supply, but they're based on oats and wheat that are negative emissions, right? So I always tell folks, to get inside of a box of Airly, the grain has to be negative emissions in a farm level life cycle analysis, so it'll never see the inside of a box of Airly. Now we do have other ingredients in there that have emissions, because people love cheese crackers, so we make an incredible cheddar cracker. So we realize that the cheddar we use does emit, but that all goes into the life cycle analysis. So we talked about LCAs. We do a farm level life cycle analysis on our grain in what we call our Airly agricultural program. That's what enables it to get into the box of Airly. And then the other ingredients, which are all minor, they're flavors in general, right? Cheese, and we have a dynamite chocolate Airly. Those things emit. They go into the analysis, the life cycle analysis of the box of Airly, right? So the box of Airly, the footprint of the box of Airly is the same footprint of the grains from the Airly on the farm. Like, so we measure all the other emissions and offset. So that's what's so powerful. With every box we buy, you're drawing down anywhere from like 21 to 19 grams of carbon dioxide per box. And what's even more exciting is our Airly Ag program. I'm watching this happen. When you actually create an economic mechanism for the scientists to deploy all this knowledge they've got, our footprint has gotten twice as good. So it's gotten twice as negative. We launched, we were at 21 grams, and that's what's in the stores today, right? But by next year, our footprint will be negative 41 grams per box. We'll have made it twice as good because the farmers are learning, right? The technology is getting better and better and better. So this is a movement that's just going to gain steam. It's going to be incredible because the learning out there, I'm watching it every day. First, we only had wheat, or excuse me, first we only had oats, then we had oats and wheat that were negative. Now we've got oats, wheat, and soy and sorghum that are all negative. So we're getting more and more and more crops learning how to grow them negative, and I think you're gonna see it accelerate.
Yeah, that's incredible. And we had a guest on the podcast named Sunny Parr from Kroger. And one of the things that she said that really stuck with me is we were talking about food waste. And she said, this is really one of our biggest climate opportunities. And I feel the same way felt when she said that right now talking about this, because this does just feel like one of our biggest climate opportunities. And